The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the Bible's most dramatic accounts, illustrating God's response to rampant sin and injustice. Have you ever wondered what could cause an entire city to be destroyed by fire and brimstone? And what would drive Lot's daughters to make the drastic decision to sleep with their father to ensure the continuation of their lineage? Imagine living in a time when flames from the sky are God's response to sin. In today's video, we'll explore this impactful story and uncover the deep lessons that still resonate for us today. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah found in Genesis reveals a powerful lesson about sin and divine justice. These cities were once symbols of wealth and prosperity, located near the fertile plains of the Jordan River. Genesis describes the region as resembling the garden of the Lord, hinting at how prosperous and vibrant Sodom and Gomorrah once were. But behind this facade of wealth, the moral decay of the inhabitants escalated to such a degree that it provoked God's judgment. As Ezekiel 16:49 puts it, "This was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy." The sins of Sodom included pride, gluttony, idleness, and a lack of compassion. Their wealth led to indulgence and a disregard for justice, a dangerous combination that sealed their fate. Jude 1:7 reinforces this by stating that Sodom and Gomorrah indulged in gross immorality and suffered the punishment of eternal fire. Lot, Abraham's nephew, was living in Sodom during this time. Although Lot had initially chosen the land near Sodom for its fertility and prosperity, he found himself in a society rife with sin. As the city's wickedness increased, God sent two angels to Sodom to investigate and deliver a warning. Lot, a righteous man, as noted in 2 Peter 2:7 chapter 8, welcomed the angels into his home, offering them protection from the sinful men of the city. The men of Sodom, however, surrounded Lot's house and demanded that he hand over the visitors so they could assault them. This violent act highlighted the extent of the city's moral degradation. In a desperate attempt to protect his guests, Lot offered his daughters instead, which reveals the extreme tension between the cultural norms of hospitality and the prevailing immorality in the city. However, the angels intervened, striking the men with blindness and urging Lot and his family to flee the city, for God's judgment was imminent. Despite the angels' warning, Lot hesitated to leave. His life in Sodom, filled with material comfort, held him back. The angels, in an act of mercy, physically took hold of Lot, his wife, and his two daughters, leading them out of the city. They were warned, "Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley." Genesis 19:17. This command to flee and not look back symbolized the need to leave behind the sinful past and fully embrace God's deliverance. Tragically, as they fled, Lot's wife disobeyed the divine instruction and looked back at the burning city. She was immediately turned into a pillar of salt. This act of looking back demonstrated her attachment to the life she was leaving behind, a life tied to the comforts and sins of Sodom. Her fate serves as a reminder of the consequences of clinging to sin and disobedience. God's judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah came swiftly and dramatically. Genesis 19:24 describes how the Lord rained down sulfur and fire from heaven, completely obliterating the cities and their inhabitants. The devastation was total, and the cities were never rebuilt. This event stands as a powerful testament to God's intolerance of unchecked sin and moral corruption. After fleeing to the safety of the small city of Zoar, Lot and his daughters eventually moved to the mountains, fearing further destruction. It was here, in isolation, that Lot's daughters took a drastic step. Believing that they were the last people on earth and that their lineage would end, they made the desperate decision to intoxicate their father and sleep with him to conceive children. This act resulted in the birth of two sons, Moab and Ammon, who would become the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites. This controversial episode in Genesis 19:30-38 reveals the complex nature of Lot's family's decisions and the far-reaching consequences of living in a morally corrupt society. Lot's daughters, although they took a sinful action, were driven by fear and desperation. Their actions remind us that sin and moral decay can cloud judgment, even in times of survival. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is not just an ancient account, but a warning for us today. It emphasizes the importance of righteousness, justice, and obedience to God. Lot and his family were saved because of Lot's righteousness, but the destruction of the cities highlights the seriousness of sin and the consequences of turning away from God's commands. The Bible calls us to examine ourselves, as 2 Corinthians 13:5 urges, "Examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves." Just as Lot was warned to flee and not look back, we too are called to keep our eyes on Christ and live lives of holiness, free from the temptations and corruptions of the world. In a world where morality is often challenged, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah reminds us to remain steadfast in our faith and values. Jesus in Luke 17:28-30 warns that just as it was in the days of Lot, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. We are called to be vigilant, to seek God's will in our lives, and to avoid the mistakes of the past. Let this story be a call to live righteously, to love justice, and to obey God's commands. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is a reminder that God's justice is real, but so is His mercy to those who follow Him. May we choose righteousness, always keeping our focus on God's eternal promises. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click on one of the 2 videos that will appear for more biblical content. Stay blessed and may God be with you.